During the last crusade I attended with my parents, the man of God said that if you want God to build you and take you into a deeper dimension, you must be ready to be broken. The truth is that when I heard this, it sounded so funny to me. Like, why would God break me first and later on uplift me? Because I believed nothing good could come out of anything broken. I was some sort of an impatient human being and suffering from what I termed as perfection syndrome. I had no middle ground in my judgment. Either someone, something, or someplace, or even an idea was perfect or not. I had no time to study or analyze something so as to bring in the best of it. That was not me until something happened that turned my life around. My name is Zoe Collins, a teacher and professor by profession, and a lover of God's Word. Here is my story. Before we continue with the story, do not forget to click on the notification button in order to get notified at every new video posted. And if you've been touched by the story, help us touch more souls by clicking on our PayPal link. May God bless you. After the death of my parents in the car crash, my uncle, who was my only family, took me in to live with him and his fiancée. He was my mom's kid brother. When my mom got married to my dad, he didn't attend the wedding. I had never understood why, because my mom and him used to be very close. I was skeptical in the beginning about how my life was going to look like in my uncle's house, but what reassured me was the fact that he was a fervent Christian and someone who loved perfection, just like I did. As time went on, I discovered that my uncle had some excesses. He would return home some nights and refuse to eat because, according to him, there are spices that lacked in the food. He would randomly argue with his fiancée because she didn't look perfect when people came to visit. He would lock me up in the house because I wasn't perfectly on time on Sunday service. His reactions were so unbelievable. What surprised me was the fact that his fiancée never complained. One day I decided to talk to her about it. "Lane, can I talk to you for a moment?" I said as I walked into the sitting room where she was laying on the couch. She didn't reply, and I moved closer and noticed that she was rather unconscious, and the glass she had in her hand fell on the ground. When I touched her, I noticed she had a very high temperature, so I quickly got ice and put it on her forehead, calling my uncle, who came and rushed her to the hospital. When she returned days later with my uncle, she told me she was pregnant. The expression on my uncle's face wasn't really a good one. I thought that the coming of a baby would be something really happy in the couple. For weeks, he was so cold towards her. When I decided to talk with her, she said it's normal for my uncle to behave that way because they had an agreement concerning children in their couple. They had agreed to wait until he got the perfect post in his company, until they built their own house and could secure a perfect future for their kids. I was dumbfounded when I heard that. "Are you kidding me? Do you really love this man?" I asked in surprise. "That is the reason why I married him," she replied slowly. "I understand, but he's taken this too far. So what next? He's just gotten the news of your pregnancy and he's behaving this way. What about the times of malaise and other stuff that come with pregnancy? How will he cope?" "It won't happen," she replied with a blank look. I don't get it. Every pregnant woman goes through that trauma at some point of her pregnancy. So when you say it won't happen, what do you really mean?" "This baby won't come. We both agreed that it's not the right time." "What?" I cut in sharply. "What exactly are you going to do? Don't tell me you're planning to abort this baby." "You can't understand." She spoke and she walked away. I hurried to my room and sat down to think about it. For a minute, I realized my uncle had brainwashed his wife into believing that everything he said was right. In my whole life, I had never heard such a thing. All that came to my mind was leaving that house. I began quickly to pack my stuff in a bag when my uncle entered the room without knocking as usual. "What's going on here, young lady?" he asked in his casual tone. Nothing. I just thought of putting my things in order," I replied nervously, trying to put my traveler's bag away. "Let me tell you a short story," he said as he walked towards me. I never really liked your father. It got worse when my silly sister decided to marry him. They were a pair of perfect fools. How could a young girl with a bright future marry a man with such a meager job? No ambition, nothing, just in the name of love. When it even happened, I tried to convince her not to give birth to any child in order for the couple not to have any offspring. But she didn't listen to me. And now they had you. When I took you in, my perception of you was somehow not clear. Until now. "What do you mean, Uncle?" You are not different from your father. I overheard the discussion between you and my wife. I thought by now you should have understood that all what I want is perfection. It's not that hard. You are insane, I caught sharply. How can you abort of a baby because of your so-called perfect timing or whatever? Are you God? I refuse to take part in this rubbish. I am leaving this house. I hadn't finished speaking when he gave me a solid slap and pushed me to the bed. How dare you? He said as he tore my clothes apart. Do you think you are more perfect than I am? Do you think that you know anything that is good for you? Since you want to be perfectly useless, I'll help you. He spoke as he raped me. He did it while my aunt was in the other room. He had her on the stronghold, so she couldn't do anything. I struggled and struggled, but it was needless. I closed my eyes, trying to think of something else, but the pain was so real. I couldn't stop him. I could hear him pour his insults on me, but I refused to see it. He was acting like he was possessed. Immediately he got done, he pulled me to the garage and locked me up there. I couldn't believe what had just happened to me. For days, I laid down there in the ice-cold floor, but I didn't feel anything. I felt nothing. I was still traumatized. Days went by. His wife would come and drop some food for me with clothes and a bucket of water, then leave. After some months, he came and collected my urine, which was used to conduct a pregnancy test. Seemingly, I had pregnancy symptoms. Immediately he got the results, he came and got me well beaten and threw me out of the garage in the middle of the night. He said that I had succeeded in making my life perfectly useless, so he couldn't keep me anymore. I stood out there for hours, not knowing where I was going to go since nobody would believe me anyway. I was the stubborn girl, the rebel, the bad person the world knew. It was needless for me to try to explain myself to whosoever. Then I decided to put an end to it all. I waited in the dark bends of the road for any car that would come approaching, and then I would just run and it would hit me, and that would be the end for me. After waiting for what seemed like years, a car showed up at the other end of the road and I immediately approached it in the spot where I was standing. I ran directly into the road. A few weeks later, I woke in a hospital room with a drip on my arm and a bandage around my head. I couldn't believe I was still alive. There was a man seated on the couch watching over me. When I woke up, he called the nurse who came and did check up on me. As the nurse left, I recognized that man. He was the man of God who preached about God bringing us so as to beautify us some years back at the crusade. "How are you feeling?" he asked with a smile. I intentionally didn't reply, but turned my back on him and faced the wall. He kept on. I know who you are." I cut in before he could finish. "You preached at the crusade in our church." "Oh wow, I'm happy to hear that. The doctor said you will soon be able to leave the hospital, and thank God the baby is doing well." Immediately he said those words, I felt like I was going to die. "Why?" I asked. "Why what?" I don't get it," he said calmly. "The baby isn't supposed to be alive," I said as I burst into tears. I then began talking and explaining everything to him while he listened calmly. And when I finished, the only thing he said is, "God is still God." Days later, I was discharged from the hospital and I went to live with him and his wife. They were very nice people who really loved God, yet they had no child after 6 years of marriage. Each day I had the opportunity, I secretly took drugs to harm the baby I was carrying, but nothing worked. Finally, I gave birth to a pretty little girl. The day she was born, I refused to touch her. I even refused to give her a name. I didn't understand how she survived all the harmful substances I consumed during pregnancy. Although I hated her with passion, the pastor and his wife took perfect care of her and even named her Asher, which means happy. I returned to high school. I finished my last year and later on enrolled in the university, and I still didn't feel happy. I used to hide and take drugs in school just in search of satisfaction and peace of mind. My past trauma was eating me up. There came a time when the pastor and his wife had to travel for 3 days of crusade, so I had to stay back with Asher. By then she was 3 years old already. I didn't know how I was going to take care of her. Thoughts of poisoning, letting her down, or fall from the stairs even crossed my mind, but I waved them off. I always let her play alone, eat by her own, and I didn't want to draw her close to me. Every time I saw her, my bitter past just suddenly showed up before me in a very clear picture. Funny enough, she didn't look like me or my devilish uncle. She was a chubby kid with dark, long eyelashes, and she was very hairy. She was full of energy too, and was always running from one part of the house to the other. One day, while I was smoking and drinking in tears on the balcony, she came, took the bottle and the cigarettes from my hand and put them in the dustbin. Then she used her little soft hands and wiped the tears off my cheeks very slowly. And then she sat and was patting my back while singing a lullaby the pastor's wife used to sing to her. For a moment, I lost my breath. This was an innocent soul who didn't ask to be product of my misfortune. And here was I, pouring out my hatred on her. I laid my head on her laps and fell asleep. The noise from the pastor's car woke us up. From that day, I shared all my worries with the pastor and he prayed for me. And I intentionally rededicated my life to Christ. Few weeks later, Asher died in her sleep. She wasn't sick. After crying out my lungs, starved myself for days, and praying became a taboo for me, I kept asking God, why will He not let me be happy? After all the pain He had put me through in my life, I had finally found the reason to smile again. After a very long time, I had learned to love my baby with all my soul. I had gradually reconciled with myself, found inner peace, and was ready to live life again with a purpose. But no, God had to take Asher away from my life. Why did He let her survive all the harmful substances I consumed so as to terminate my pregnancy? Why didn't He just take her away without me knowing her properly? After months spent mourning, I finally understood with the help of the man of God that it was all His will for me to draw closer to Him through Asher. It was very hard to accept, but this event led me to a deeper revelation of God and the fact that His ways are not our ways. After graduating from university, I enrolled in the School of Theology and took a master's degree in evangelism and missions. When I finished, I began assisting Pastor David in his service, and most of the times he gave me the platform to preach during crusades. During one of the crusades, a group of people came forth to accept Christ, and amongst them, I recognized my uncle who almost ruined my life. At first, a picture of my past flashed through my mind, but I remember how far God had brought me, and I stayed calm. After the crusade, he followed me to my car and was trying to kneel down, but he was on a wheelchair. He apologized in tears for what he had done and also confessed that he was not my mom's blood brother, but an adopted son. He also admitted that his perversion came from the fact that he used to be attracted to my mom. So he took advantage of the person closer to her when he got the occasion. After listening to him speak, I held his hands and prayed with him, then walked away. Today I am a lecturer at the university, and every platform I get, I use it to share God's word and bring people to the knowledge of God.